Hello all. Where would you like to ride today? The countryside? How about the city? Maybe a mountain forest? Or a sandy beach? No matter how far away, or in our own backyard, I hope you'll ride along. Hello all. Welcome back to On the Road with Vincent. Now, I know you're thinking, this is no road. We're not on the road. We're at the edge of the woods. But we're actually going to be searching for an old road. A road that once existed through here and has been moved up the hill. We are actually at my parents' house right now. This is where I spent the first 24 years of my life. And I spent quite a bit of time in these woods growing up. And we're just going to take a little walk through the woods as I tell you what's to come this season on the Road with Vincent. So what is so special about these woods, you may wonder? Well, as I said, I spent quite a bit of time here in the first 24 years of my life as I was living at my parents', just roaming these woods. They're not very big, and they've actually shrunk a little bit since I was younger. But we are somewhat deep into them now. We're not quite to the center. And I'm just going to kind of talk you through a little bit about what these woods mean to me here. When I was younger, my dad would actually take my sister and I back here walking, usually on Christmas Eve as my mom was wrapping the last of our presents. And that was actually my first exposure back here. But then as I got older, started venturing out on my own, you know, I just spent a lot more time back here, just kind of meditating with myself, being here alone. Of course, I spent quite a bit of time back here hunting and, you know, just exploring. And that's kind of where my whole passion for exploration started, was back in these woods. Now, as you'll see when we get closer to the bottom here, there's quite a few treasures kind of scattered about down here. And, you know, I would always find something new when I was back here. So maybe we'll find something new today. Now these woods are pretty symbolic to me for the fact that I kind of attribute these woods to the majority of my adolescence and growing up through my teenage years. And, you know, as here we are in the middle of these woods, one could easily be lost. And that's where I kind of saw myself in my teenage years. You know, I was getting ready to leave home, as we've just left my parents now, wandering out into the world, wandering out into the woods, not really knowing where I needed to go, where I belong, where I fit in. Just kind of tossed out into the middle of everything, not knowing what dangers were around me. Now, there's quite a bit of wildlife in these woods. Bears and coyotes like to den through here, among other things. And I've had my run-ins back here, just as I have in the real world. But I never let that stop me from exploring this beauty. Now, as you can see, there's a little animal path here. They're all throughout these woods. And of course, we have our Blair Witch mess of trees over here. And we are kind of on one of the outer edges of the woods right now. We're not as deep into them as we will be. But, you know, these animal trails are all throughout these woods. And this is one of the best ways to get around in these woods, following these trails. Which again is much like my early teenage years, kind of following in others' footsteps and not really breaking out on my own path. And of course, along these piles of junk and rusted out cars, finally brings us to the creek bed. Now, as you can see right here, there's not really much going on for this creek. There are multiple springs along the bed here, but unfortunately, over the years, since my childhood, most of them have dried up by this point. But that makes me think back to when I was really young. This was about as far as we would ever get, because the creek would be flowing through here, and, you know, on Christmas Eve, we didn't really want to be hopping over a creek. Lots of times there might be snow or ice on the ground still, and getting up this hill when we were little kids was a feat in its own. But as I got older, that's when I started exploring on my own back here more, and started finding new ways to get across. And here's just a few other relics from my childhood. The flat bottom soda bottles. And before any of you start thinking, no, we are not the ones who threw all this trash back here. It was here long before we ever lived here. And I think there's going to be some of this trash here long after we're gone. So, a little bit later in my teenage years, venturing back here, finally got across the creek. And again, back then, this still was flowing pretty well at that time. Maybe some of these upper two springs had dried up, but starting about right here, as you can actually see now after the heavy rains we've had, there is some little bit of movement in this water through here. But I'd finally gotten out into the world at this point, and I was still conflicted in myself of what I really wanted to do with my life. You know, I had found who my real friends were at this point, and of course the band Mortuary was formed with Dee and I, along with our friend Claude. And actually, I do have pictures somewhere of us on this hilltop in a thick snow one winter day back when we were still in high school. We spent quite a bit of time back in these woods, especially me and Claude, and we'd run all the way back through here at night, never knowing what we were going to run into. But that's what made it exciting, you know, just getting out there and not knowing where it was going to lead. Granted, I'd been through these woods enough. I know where they come out at every corner. But still, there's always the possibility of finding something new. Now, back at the beginning of the video, I did say we were searching for an old road. Now, as you look through here, there's not even close to being a remnant of an old road. But I think we'll still find something of it. The road did exist years ago through here. I believe it was moved on top of the hill back around the 1930s because, as you can see through here, this area is very subject to washouts, and that's all that would happen to the road at that time. Of course, there weren't asphalt roads around here then, and of course you want the cleanest route possible accessing these back mountain roads. So right here is a place known as the Dare. Now, what other meaning would that have besides, I dare you to jump across this in the snow and ice. I can't remember how many times we made this. Not many, because it only takes a couple times of jumping across here, spraining your ankle, jamming your hip bone, any of that to realize you don't need to prove yourself too many more times. But yeah, this was the site of quite a few minor injuries between Claude and I, and even a couple with David Undead, our roadie. But I don't think I'm going to be making this jump anymore. I don't know, maybe if I lose another 40 or 50 pounds, get back to the shape I was in back then, maybe I'll give it another shot. But as of now, I don't need to go crashing down in there with a 30-pound book bag on my back. So again, what does any of this have to do with anything, you might ask? Especially with On the Road with Vincent, this channel in general. Well, as this series started as just a reflection of where Midnight Massacre came from as a band, I've been doing a lot of thinking over the last few months. 2020 was a rough year for all of us, naturally, and 2021's not starting out much better. And it really made me appreciate where we've came from again. Now, here I've been telling you about my life, through my teenage years. And, if you look up this hill here, my parents' house isn't far up the hillside. these, as I said, these woods are not that deep, but we are pretty much in the heart of them now. And finding my place in life, finding music, is really the turning point of my life. That was where I knew that any way I took, as long as I stayed with my music, I could at least find some happiness, some joy. And looking back on last year, the garbage year that it was, at least still had my music. And that's what I want to do this year, is look back at where we come from, how things change over time. Not just the band, but everything. As I've said, these woods through here once contained a state highway, and that's been gone for upwards of close to 100 years now. There's no sign at all right through here that there was ever a road through here. And I just want to show how we've changed, how the band's changed, how towns change, how the world changes over time. Now, of course, we're still going to have our favorites at our spooky locations, some cemeteries, filming locations, historical places, and just other random fun trips. But I do want to take some time this year to, again, really reflect on where we've come from and where we are now. So let's move on with our journey. Now, time has greatly changed these woods, even in my lifetime. As I said, this creek was once full flowing when I was younger, about 7 or 8 years old, and even now there is still water flowing, just not to the extent it once was. But looking back about 3 or 4 years ago, this creek bed was almost completely dry. The rain actually came through, washed out a little deeper into this creek bed, and exposed some of the springs that were once stopped up, once hidden, as this one here. So now, there's finally some movement, finally some life in this creek again. It's looking for somewhere to go, just as we are, and we've actually found the remnants of the old highway. So naturally, I should mention that the road hasn't been this clean for the last 100 years. It has actually been cleaned out and smoothed over a little bit here within the last 15 years or so, maybe a little more, and has exposed a little more of it. But we are still now on the old road, and we're going to follow this, see where it takes us. So let's recap a little. Started at my parents' house, wandered out into the world, through these woods and felt a little lost to begin with. Didn't know where to go. Following in footsteps, crossed a metaphorical bridge in life, and then found the road I was meant to take. Much like this creek here, people can dry up over time. There's no life left in us. And it takes a little external force to get us moving again. As the rain washed out and opened up some of these springs, it gave new life to this creek again, just like it gives new life to us. So where exactly did this road take me? When I discovered where I wanted to be in life, where did it take me? Of course, that road brought me to this cabin. Of course, if you've been following us for any period of time, you know that we once used to practice in this cabin. This is where Mortuary, D&I's first band, was born. And, of course, this is where many Midnight Massacre practices took place for years. And of course, Perfection and Decay practices before that. And if you've been following us for that period of time, you know that we've actually left this cabin. We haven't had a practice here since 2019, but we still come down here and visit quite a bit. So that creek we've been following for so long, of course, has taken us to the pond, where we spent many afternoons before practice just relaxing, fishing from the banks, or just sitting out here enjoying life. Now this water has stopped, only temporarily though, just as the last year has kind of stopped us temporarily. But I still look at last year as a success. Yes, we suffered some losses last year, and there was a lot of trials we had to go through. But we ended the year playing our first show in the Midwest, traveling as far away as we have for this band at least. And it all started right here at this cabin, again. No, Midnight Massacre was not formed in this cabin. The idea for it wasn't even conceived here. But this is where the majority of our songs were crafted, our styles, and our personalities as well. Just who we are as Midnight Massacre. And while this water may be stopped up now in this pond, again, it's only temporary. It might be stuck here for weeks or months at a time, but eventually it does make its way out. Becomes a little stream again. One day finds the rivers, one day finds the ocean. And that's what everyone needs to remember. Even if you do feel lost in the woods, you'll find a path. And if you feel stuck, you feel bottled up, you'll be out in the world again. You will move on again. So, again, I hope you have enjoyed this rather different episode of On the Road with Vincent. Our next episode will take us back on the road. And, of course, we will be seeing some highlights from our trip to Cincinnati and many other trips as well to come this year. have quite a bit planned for this year to come. I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the rest of the channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed this little quote-unquote inspirational talk video, I hope you'll give this a like as well. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you all next time.